Chapter 76 Controlling the Boss's Move Path. In the forest, Blue River practically only saw the goblin merchant, with his butt out, carrying a massive backpack and chasing Lord Grimm's figure. The rest of Tyrannical Ambition's players had unexpectedly all scattered into the woods, becoming sniper guerrillas. This goblin merchant, when facing normal players, wouldn't it bounce around and freely and easily throw items out of his backpack? Why was it having such a hard time chasing Lord Grimm? When it threw a grenade, Lord Grimm had actually hit it back in midair, making it explode onto its head. It really was stupid. What time grenade? You were using a trigger type. Although it was like this, to hit the grenade in midair back to the goblin merchant's head, Lord Grimm wasn't only quick, his microing was extremely precise too. Blue River madly chased after it while sighing with sorrow. After all, Lord Grimm was both attacking and leading the goblin merchant away. He couldn't be moving at his fastest speed. Blue River and the others quickly caught up. Behind his Blue Brook Guild, a crowd of other players also steadily kept pace behind them as if they were wolves. How could Blue River not know that those guys behind his butt were despicable? But the Blood Gunner incident taught them a bloody lesson. If he hesitated and didn't move forward, then Tyrannical Ambition would take the advantage. 1,000 Creations, go around to the front and block him, Blue River said. Why me? 1,000 Creations was depressed. You're a battle mage, if you don't go who will? With the chaser's additional effects, battle mages were faster than others by a grade. There's still Little C, 1,000 Creations was talking about another battle mage, Little C. Your skill is better, Blue River wasn't afraid to hurt Little C. Everyone recognized 1,000 Creations' skill. In that guy's eyes, my little skill is nothing, 1,000 Creations said. How many times have you fought with him? Blue River said. I don't believe you can't see his terrifying skill, 1,000 Creations said. Okay, there's nothing to block anyways, we've already caught up, Thundering Light ridiculed. While these two guys argued, the goblin merchant had already entered their range. Thundering Light stepped forward and used Raging Flames. It wasn't easy for the mage to hit the target. He first had to be familiar with the magic's release time and determine the target's movement direction and speed to predict its future position. Thundering Light was an expert and wasn't lacking in this area. Raging Flames covered a wide area, so it was a bit easier to hit. He accurately chose the area 3 bodies in front of the goblin merchant and casted his magic, releasing it there. Spitfire. At this moment, Yishu sent a message to the party. The party channel was completely clean. They were afraid of affecting Yishu's leading. When the Spitfire saw the message, without saying another word, he fired a light element bullet. The light element bullet flickered and sent out a pop-paw sound, instantly hitting the goblin merchant's body. Light scattered around the goblin merchant's body. It trembled from head to toe. After the short distraction, it suddenly changed directions towards the left side of the forest and ran. F***CKER. Thundering Light was dumbstruck. His magic had already finished casting and he thought that he would see the goblin merchant fly up into the air. This would have been the perfect opportunity to let them fight over it for at least 2 seconds. Who knew that the goblin merchant would suddenly change directions and aggro onto a different target? Having changed direction, that Raging Flames rose up but only hit air. Do you have any skill? Can you play? You let it OT at a key moment, you idiot. Thundering Light stomped furiously and shouted angrily at the tree in that direction. So noisy, a brawler from Blue Brook Guild said this and threw a brick at the goblin merchant. Although a thrown brick would have its effect reduced by half, it was thrown at the back of the goblin's head, so its chance to dizzy increased by half too. As a result, the chance to dizzy was quite high and would stall it for a bit of time. Who knew that a gun sound would ring out while this flying brick was in midair? With a bang, the brick was broken into pieces and a pile of brick dust fell down. The brawler was also dumbstruck. F***CKER. The brawler shouted, am I cursed? Am I dreaming? Tyrannical Ambition has this sort of expert? No one answered him. The players with good eyes had seen that the weird thing in Lord Grimm's hand had puffed out gun smoke. Pay attention to Lord Grimm's weapon, Blue River said to everyone, it's weird. Model. No, Blue River couldn't think of the word at this moment. Capture the goblin merchant before talking, someone said. Although both had failed to stall the Goblin Merchant, the distance between Blue Brook Guild and the Goblin Merchant still close. Who would have thought that when the Goblin Merchant ran to that tree, the one to appear wasn't a Spitfire, but a grappler. The grappler grabbed the Goblin Merchant and threw it towards Lord Grimm. Grapplers were specialists in grabbing, and each grab had different effects. This fling threw it faster and farther than Lord Grimm's usual fling. Blue Brook Guild once again went on a pointless trip, and everyone was seething with anger. At that side, Lord Grimm had already welcomed it, and after 2 or 3 attacks, he re-established the Goblin Merchant's aggro onto himself. He did another circle swing and fling. In the blink of an eye, the distance between the Goblin Merchant and Blue Brook Guild widened once again. Wait a moment, Bound Boat figured something out. That OT just before might not have been an accident. It was something they arranged. It was intentional, Bound Boat said. What are you saying? Everyone was frightened. They want to use this sort of method to actively control the goblins' move path. Is that sort of method even possible? Everyone was at a loss. The facts are in front of you, Bound Boat said. It's Lord Grimm. It's all because of his leading, Blue River said. What do we do? Someone asked. Disperse into groups of 2 and attack every one of them, Blue River said. That'd make us easy pickings. Bound Boat was a little worried about the players behind them. Those trash won't change the situation, Blue River said. How come we haven't seen anyone from Herb Garden? Bound Boat said. That trash Plantago seed is hiding again. We have to be cautious of this. Why aren't our players here yet? Blue River was worried. Their Blue Brook Guild wasn't just these dozen or so people. Herb Garden's players are here. Bound Boat suddenly put out these words. Blue River looked forward. As expected, a crowd of players lay in the forest in front of them. Although the names on top of their heads weren't clear, Blue River had had many dealings with them and instantly determined that they were Herb Garden names. They're going around to flank them, Bound Boat said. That trash Plantago seed, he definitely received info from a traitor, Blue River disdained. When they go block Lord Grimm's path, take advantage of the situation to steal the boss back, Bound Boat said. Forward, Blue River roared. Chapter 77, Directly Flying Over. Blue Brook Guild's players were chasing from behind. And ahead, Herb Garden's players suddenly popped out. Tyrannical ambition sunk into a dilemma where they were pressed from the front and rear. Elementalist, Yishu yelled. The Elementalist immediately cast a flame explosion and the boss once again oded. The Goblin Merchant headed towards the Elementalist located in the right side of the forest. It really is on purpose, Blue River and the others were certain now. Are they going to run to the east? Bound Boat decided. Go east. Blue River led his party to the east and was ready to rush over when the time was right. If you meet Tyrannical Ambition's players, don't be polite, Blue River commanded. We definitely won't, everyone declared. While they ran to the east, everyone paid attention to behind the trees. They all hoped to pick off a Tyrannical Ambition player to warm up. In the end, the only things they were able to pick off were small goblins. They didn't find a single Tyrannical Ambition player. The Tyrannical Ambitions they occasionally saw were all even farther away than the Goblin Merchant. The Herb Garden players in front of them didn't want to fall behind either, so when the Blue Brook Guild changed direction, they also raced against Blue Brook Guild and rushed to the east. When the two guilds changed directions, Bound Boat was immediately startled. They're not trying to misdirect us, right? Blue River also felt something wasn't right. Bring a few players and go around to the west. Bound Boat immediately chose a few players. The Blue Brook Guild force split into 2. One went to the east to intercept, while the other went to the west to prepare for an interception. Herb Garden immediately responded in the same way and sent a part of their forces to the west. Those who didn't understand the situation would have thought that these two groups were together. In reality, they weren't together at all. Both groups would be delighted if the other group made a mistake. The Goblin Merchant that was running at the Elementalist was suddenly hit by a rappel from behind a tree. It slipped backwards a length and then a gun sound rang out. The Goblin Merchant once again turned around in hesitation. As expected, it really was a misdirection. The Blue Brook Guild and Herb Garden players that saw this scene all began pondering over it in their hearts. Moreover, the goblin was rushing over to where Lord Grimm was. Minnesota. Who would have thought that the one to OT and take the aggro was Lord Grimm? And this guy ran to the north. Although Herb Garden had split its forces to the east and west, there was still time to merge again and block the enemy's path. If they kept on running, then wouldn't they be running into a metal wall? What type of trick is he planning to pull? Players who love to analyze were all pondering over Lord Grimm's thinking. He'll definitely change routes, right? Some players thought. Herb Garden pondered over this even more seriously. After all, they were there to block his path. East or west or the original direction, where were they supposed to wait? In the end, Plantago Seed helplessly split his forces into three. He had no choice but to defend every side. No choice. If the other side wanted to OT, then they would OT. Whatever route they wanted the Goblin Merchant to follow, the Goblin Merchant would follow. They could only defend on all three sides. Which side would he go to? Everyone carried this type of question, fixed their attention on the Goblin's move path. In the end, they didn't see any change. They saw Lord Grimm lead the Goblin Merchant directly towards Herb Garden's interception. Herb Garden also had a dozen or so players here. They immediately formed an arc to surround him. Long-ranged gunner-class players had already CKED their guns and fired. Mages began casting their magic. Lord Grimm suddenly leapt. The gunners immediately adjusted their aim. But in the end, they saw Lord Grimm spin 180 degrees in the air, his butt pointed at them. The butt is the butt. The gunners didn't really care and their cursors quickly aimed at his butt. A gun sound. Admiration arose in the gunners' hearts. Who aimed so quickly? What an amazing speed. Then, they saw Lord Grimm slide across the horizon. Minnesota, it's his aerial fire, all of the gunners cried out in fear. In aerial fire, the higher the recoil, the faster the flying speed. Lord Grimm's gun had to be at least a rifle grade. All of the gunners raised their guns and open-fired. But in the end, they only hit air. The target moved too quickly and they weren't able to hit him. Lord Grimm's butt reached the top of their heads in a flash. Then, they saw Lord Grimm turn his body. A cold light flashed and Lord Grimm pulled out a sword in midair. Falling light blade. Quickly retreat. The blade masters all warned. Their judgment wasn't wrong. A bright light slashed down from midair. It was precisely the battle master skill falling light blade. These dozen Herb Garden players weren't ordinary players. Every one of them jumped backwards. The bright light fell to the ground and a small light wave rippled out. But the dozen players had already jumped outside of the wave's range. Forward, someone roared. After the light wave scattered, in an instant, the dozen players rushed forward. Lord Grimm's myriad manifestation umbrella shook and the umbrella flipped, not maintaining the battle lance form. A third of the umbrella ribs suddenly broke off. The remaining 2/3 of the umbrella ribs bent into a sickle-like shape. And at the same time, the umbrella handle moved outwards as if he were pulling out a sword, but stopped 2/3 of the way out. In the end, the umbrella handle extended a length. This transformation only took an instant. The players surrounding him only saw a blur and Lord Grimm's weapon had already changed into a different shape. They couldn't really describe the weapon, but it looked like a. His arm swung and the myriad manifestation umbrella drew out a 360-degree circle around him. When the starting point and ending point linked together, the circle suddenly flashed a blue light. F***CK. Rising emblem, a player finally called out. This time, the players surrounding him retreated a little too late. The floating blue circle suddenly flashed and grew larger and a pale blue ring suddenly rose. The dozen players were all inside the ring. They weren't able to dodge in time and were thrown up into the air. The Priest Class Exorcist skill, Rising Emblem. The skill did magic damage and knocked up all players inside the Rising Emblem. By the time the dozen players fell back to the ground, Lord Grimm had already broken through their blockade. A few players tried hard to attack Lord Grimm in midair. But while knocked up, the target was constantly moving and difficult to target accurately. It wasn't an easy task. Not everyone could do this well. In the end, everyone's attacks were futile efforts and weren't threatening at all. However, almost all of the players were able to quick recover after falling down, showing the quality of Herb Garden's players. But when they were still rolling and getting up, they all saw a grenade within their circle. A boom, and the dozen players swayed side to side from the explosion. Within the surging smoke, the goblin merchant carried its backpack and freely and easily passed through them. Everyone's cheeks streamed with tears. The goblin merchant's aggro wasn't on their characters. That explosion obviously wasn't meant for them. Clearly, Lord Grimm had intentionally drawn the goblin merchant to throw it at them. Why did the goblin merchant help Lord Grimm? Why couldn't you have thrown a brick at them? Did you have to throw an AoE grenade? Chapter 78, Forced into Helplessness. The 10 swaying players didn't have time to recover when they saw a dozen tyrannical ambition players evilly come out from behind the trees and rush over. The tyrannical ambition players took the opportunity to conveniently throw a few grenades and cast out some magic towards them without wasting time, and then continue to chase the goblin merchant. After all, that was their true target. The dozen players swayed once again and turned depressed. Just when they recovered, Blue Brook Guild's players whistled by. Trash. Truly trash. Blue River relentlessly ridiculed these opponents. Afterwards, he led his group of people, and Shua also took the opportunity to conveniently slash a few times and cast some magic. These pitiful dozen players were tossed around from all around. Their luck wasn't good. They were bullied around. They were taken advantage of. They directly fell and died. Plantago Seed was extremely furious. The boss hadn't been stopped and his guild members were even taken advantage of. He directly sent Blue River a message: "You're all beasts. You guys really are a bunch of trash. You couldn't even stop the boss." Blue River replied. UF*CKERS were here all day and you guys couldn't do anything, Plantago Seed replied. We're both in the same boat, Blue River replied. Afterwards, both sides were completely silent. Their hearts felt very heavy. Ahead, the injuries the goblin merchant suffered grew more and more severe. Clearly, tyrannical ambition's reinforcements were gradually trickling in. Every time Blue River and the others closed in, tyrannical ambition nimbly oded, keeping them away. The goblin merchant's advance wasn't regular at all, making everyone feel extremely frustrated. Blue River had originally hoped that Herb Garden's interception would help them catch up. But who knew that Herb Garden's players were complete trash? Helpless, he could only use his original plan. 2 players in a team. Look for tyrannical ambition players and get rid of them. They basically couldn't catch the goblin merchant. They would occasionally hit it once or twice, but this sort of hit was the same as helping tyrannical ambition output damage. They weren't able to steal its aggro and were unable to take the initiative from beginning to end. If they kept wasting their time like this, then tyrannical ambition's damage output would be enough. The boss could kill whoever it liked, but as long as someone from tyrannical ambition stayed alive, then it wasn't possible to steal it away. Only if they were able to completely drive them out or kill them all out would they be able to steal it. As a result, stealing the boss was quite difficult. If they arrived too late, there was no way to take back the damage on the boss, so the only solution would be to kill everyone that had attacked the boss. This turned into a big PK problem because the skill gap between players was very small. Killing players would always be more difficult than killing monsters. Moreover, there was no end to the trouble. Blue Brook Guild didn't worry about any later troubles. Directly fighting with tyrannical ambition and peeking with them to steal the boss were occurrences that they were already used to. To them, the more crucial point was that tyrannical ambition's strength and their strength were about the same. As a result, if they fought them, then it would be a 50-50 fight. But regardless of this, it was still better than silently watching. Blue Brook Guild had around 20 players at hand. At this moment, they split into around 10 small 2-member teams and spread throughout the forest. As soon as they saw a tyrannical ambition player, they would immediately hurry over. In an instant, the goblin merchant was no longer the sole focus. All of the tyrannical ambition players were. The 2-member teams that found them all cautiously closed in on their targets. But chasing players wasn't an easy task. Everyone's levels and equipment were around the same. Their movement speed and endurance were also around the same. Chasing and chasing, Thundering Light suddenly said in the guild channel, "Huh? Where did that goblin merchant go? I can't see it anymore." His message roused everyone. Everyone had only been focused on the target in front of them. But what about their end target? Was it still there? Once everyone took note of it, even those who could still see the goblin merchant suddenly found that it was farther away. We've been duped, bound boat recovered. This time's boss, let's give up, Blue River gloomily announced. The guild members didn't utter a word. This sort of situation was rarely seen in their famous Blue Brook Guild. Fighting and then giving up midway? This sort of attitude usually only happened when a new dungeon and new boss was released. But now, it was just a goblin merchant. It was a small boss everyone knew thoroughly. Their opponents were also the extremely familiar tyrannical ambition. Their opponents only had a Lord Grim, yet they had unexpectedly given them such a difficult time and made them give up. Hey, why aren't you guys chasing anymore? Plantago Seed sent a message. It's all yours, Blue River said. What are you planning? Plantago Seed doubted. Keep chasing and you'll know. Because Plantago Seed and the others had just turned around from being in the front for an interception to chasing from behind, at this moment, they hadn't yet experienced how tyrannical ambition used OT to control the goblin merchant's move path. Their morale was still high. Quote, however, this only lasted for a short moment. After Herb Garden chased for a while, they were finally also all shocked by that sort of OT move path method. After trying left and right to no avail, Plantago Seed heavily announced, 2 players in a team. Start killing tyrannical ambitions players. Quote. Although Blue Brook Guild's players had already given up, they still casually followed them to watch the excitement. Seeing how Herb Garden did the same as them and split up to kill tyrannical ambitions players, they all suddenly felt great. Tisk 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 tisk, the crowd was filled with these sort of sounds. After 5 minutes, Plantago Seed sent Blue River a message, UF*CKER. Why didn't you say so earlier? Clearly, they had also discovered that they had been tricked. If I said it, would you have believed me? Blue River replied. Plantago Seed muttered to himself and then replied seriously, I definitely wouldn't have. Then that's that, Blue River said. What do we do now? Are you guys going to give up? Plantago Seed. Yeah, Blue River said. I don't really believe you, Plantago Seed said. UF*CKER, Blue River said helplessly. Herb Garden's players once again gathered together dejectedly for a while. Blue Brook Guild wasn't far from them. The one that were very far from them was the Goblin Merchant. Of those other assortment of guilds and players, the ones with skill had already seen that Herb Garden and Blue Brook Guild had given up. These 2 big guilds had skill and were organized too. Yet they hadn't fared well at all. So what could these second-rate guilds and other random players do? At this moment, if everyone united together, there might still be a chance. But who would lead them? Plantago Seed grew restless. He moved in front of Blue River and directly said, if we can't kill it, how can we just let tyrannical ambition easily take it? If we all unite together, it doesn't matter who takes the first kill, in any case, it better not be tyrannical ambition's name. It's just a goblin merchant. Is there any point in making such a big scene? Blue River said. Plantago Seed thought, there really was no point. This was the smallest wild boss. If tyrannical ambition won over it, it didn't mean anything. There was still a long road ahead of them. You're always unwilling to, Plantago Seed said. Then you go ahead. It's not like I'm stopping you, Blue River said. F*CKER, using so much effort won't do a lot of good. I'm not going to do it on my own, Plantago Seed said. Chapter 79, Changing Spring. The hunting for the Goblin Merchant started off exciting, but ended peacefully. Once Blue Brook Guild and Herb Garden gave up, the other guilds with skill all got a clue and decided to not waste any more time. The remaining random players still didn't understand the situation and refused to give up. They ended up assisting tyrannical ambition in outputting damage. Finally, when tyrannical ambition was announced as the Goblin Merchant's first killers, Blue Brook Guild and Herb Garden were extremely tranquil. To be tagged as a guild, it meant that the members of the first kill didn't consist of members from outside the guild. However, Lord Grimm had only recently left Blue Brook Guild and 5 days hadn't passed yet, so he couldn't join Tyrannical Ambition. Clearly, when the boss fell, he left the party and naturally wouldn't appear on the leaderboards, keeping Tyrannical Ambition pure. Blue River despised this point because they all understood clearly that Lord Grimm contributions to Tyrannical Ambition killing off the Goblin Merchant were very large. Blue River believed that usage of OT to control the boss's move path was simply not possible for Tyrannical Ambition's own players to have come up. This was because if it wasn't possible for their Blue Brook Guild to have come up with such a plan, then without a doubt, the similar-leveled Tyrannical Ambition definitely wasn't capable either. They completely relied on Lord Grimm's leading. Blue River had already thoroughly believed that Lord Grimm's strength was on a completely different level than theirs. He was a great expert that surpassed normal players like them. With such a strength, how could he be a nobody? Which expert created this low-level account? Blue River obviously couldn't put Lord Grimm as a new player. This sort of valiant leading meant that he had to have incredible knowledge of the game. It wasn't possible for him to be a new player. Brother, Blue River opened up his friends list and calmly sent a message to Lord Grimm. How long do you think it'll take for you to reach level 23? Everyone cares so much about this issue, Yishu replied. Blue River wasn't surprised. The reason everyone cared about this problem so much was simple. At level 23, he could enter the Boneyard Dungeon. Everyone was waiting for him to level up and then invite him to set a new record. Today, Tyrannical Ambition stole the Goblin Merchant and had gotten a taste of success. They must have also recognized this great expert's value. I don't know either. Keep playing and we'll see, Yishu replied. You have to ask us for the Boneyard Dungeon, Blue River said. Let's discuss this later, Yishu didn't answer it. Blue River was desperate. He had already predicted that these great guilds would fight desperately for Lord Grimm in order to break and maintain records in the 10th server. Because he had seen Lord Grimm's calmness and intellect for himself, he was afraid that Lord Grimm had become an expensive mercenary. He didn't have much confidence in controlling this situation. Blue River kept thinking and temporarily logged out of the game. He inserted a different card logging in as the high-leveled Blue Bridge Spring Snow. At this time, in the Heavenly Domain, all of the players were bustling about and actively using their renewed dungeon entries. But once Blue Bridge Spring Snow went online, he still attracted a lot of the guild's attention. This was one of the guild's 5 great experts. Moreover, wasn't he supposed to be in the 10th server? Why did he suddenly run here? The first one to send a message to Blue River was Blue Brook Guild's leader, Changing Spring. The message was very simple? Question mark. Question mark. Question mark. 4 big question marks. Busy, Blue River asked. Dungeon, meaning that he was currently in a dungeon. Let's talk after you're out, Blue River said. Urgent. It's not urgent, but I need to talk with you. Wait. Changing Spring's messages were always this concise. But this definitely wasn't because he had few words to say, he was simply too lazy to type it out. This guy's hand speed was extremely fierce. He was also obsessed over it. He intentionally did a few useless movements to increase his hand speed and also didn't want to waste movements on chatting. His most famous moment was when someone raged at Changing Spring in the World Channel. In the end, Changing Spring was clearly online but he never responded. For a great guild leader like him, this sort of action wasn't proper. Even if he was too lazy to argue with the guy, he was still the guild leader. Being raged on by someone on the World Channel made the entire guild feel like they were losing their dignity. The guild members looked for him to respond, but Changing Spring said he had already responded. Everyone was depressed. Later, when they opened the World Channel and looked carefully, they unexpectedly found it. In the heap of messages in the World Channel, Changing Spring responded with a total of 3 letters, GFY, TL, GFY equals go F asterisk CK yourself. The entire guild kneeled and bowed up and down in worship. From then on, GFY became Blue Brook Guild's unsurpassed reply to other people's rage at them. They continue to use it to this day. Blue River had gotten used to Old Spring's style. He didn't say anything else and waited. After 10 minutes passes, Changing Spring sent a message, where? Mount Brook City. Mount Brook City was one of the big cities in the heavenly domain. Because the name had the word Brook in it, Blue Brook Guild stationed their guild there. After a short while, Changing Spring hurried over. The two players met. Changing Spring didn't leave anything out. Did something happen? A great expert appeared in the 10th server, Blue River said. How good? Changing Spring was amazed. Blue River had impatiently ran back to report to him just because of this expert? I can't tell how good he is, Blue River said. What class? He still hasn't changed classes, Blue River said. Hasn't changed classes? Yeah, he's learned skill from many different classes. It's as if he's playing unspecialized, Blue River said. Changing Spring laughed. If he's unspecialized, then of course his early levels are strong. His advantage in the number of skills he has is too prominent. But later on, without the damage from mid to high level skills, he won't be able to keep up. He also needs too many weapons. The heavy weight would impact his speed. Moreover, once he reached level 50, there's no way to play anymore. Who still plays unspecialized? I also thought this when I first saw him. But this guy's strength isn't here. I admit to the skills advantage in the early levels, but from this guy's playing speed to theory crafting to leading to coordination, they're all extremely strong, Blue River said. To play unspecialized in this day and age, of course this guy has a comprehensive knowledge of the game. But Changing Spring said this and also felt that this sort of explanation was too far-fetched. Someone with just a comprehensive knowledge of the game wouldn't move Blue River like this. Currently, in the 10th server, he took 3 first kills in the beginner village. Because of his participation in the Frost Forest dungeon, our party set the new record. Because of his participation in the Goblin Merchant hunt, the first kill was grabbed by Tyrannical Ambition. The Bloodgunner first kill. He brought a party of random players and stole it right from under the 3 great guilds' eyes. Blue River felt these accomplishments were already sufficient in convincing him. He's played with us? And also helped Tyrannical Ambition? And then stole the Bloodgunner away right from under the 3 great guilds' eyes? Which side is he from? Changing Spring didn't understand. He's not from any side. I've tried to rope him in, but he's not interested. From what I can see, this guy wants to be hired like this. He'll raise the prices extremely high and then earn a fortune, Blue River said. This guy's a little strange. What's his name? Lord Grimm. Lord Grimm. Is there an expert with such a name in this server? Changing Spring was at a loss. Chapter 80, A Guild Leader's Troubles. Never heard of it. Blue River accompanied Changing Spring and was at a loss too. If there really is such a person, then I'll come over sometime and see for myself, Changing Spring said. Okay, wait until he's level 23 and I'll make an appointment to set a new record in the boneyard. You should come when the time comes, Blue River said. He's not level 23 yet? Changing Spring was surprised. Still 21, Blue River was a little embarrassed on behalf of Lord Grimm. No matter what was said, levels in a game would always be a type of symbol. As the 10th server's most popular expert, with levels as such an important indicator to normal people, this made people like Blue River, who was almost level 25, speechless. This. I definitely have to see him for myself if there's a chance, Changing Spring said. Then, I'll call you over next time, Blue River said. Okay, Changing Spring nodded his head. Although he didn't say it directly, he already understood Blue River's purpose for coming here. Blue River wanted to know what the true guild leader's decision on what to do with this expert, on whether or not to fight for him with everything they had. After casually chatting for a bit, Changing Spring left. Blue River habitually admired his high-leveled account. Right when he was about to go offline and leave, he suddenly heard a voice he didn't like. Oh, Old Blue? Why did you come over? How unlucky. He had only come back for such a short amount of time and he unfortunately ran into this guy. Blue River sighed and turned around. He immediately saw Poplar Beach, this extravagant name, as well as that full body of extravagant equipment. Nothing much. I had a bit of business to do here, Blue River replied indifferently. If you have so much time, why don't we compare notes in the arena? Poplar Beach was clearly concerned about the previous unfinished duel. No time. I still need to go back to the new server to dungeon. Blue River crisply rejected him. It won't take that long. Poplar Beach seemed to like controlling his voice to sound luxurious. From this guy's name to his equipment, they were all extremely extravagant. Naturally, the actual meaning of his words was suggesting he could easily dispatch Blue River. Blue River was a person who was worried about losing face, so he was immediately angered. His blood was boiling and he had the heart to immediately teach this guy a lesson, but then he suddenly heard a voice, "Blue Bridge, shouldn't you hurry up?" Blue River turned around and he didn't know when, but Changing Spring had come back. "I'm going," Blue River responded and didn't bother with Poplar Beach, immediately logging out. Changing Spring had come back to get him out of trouble. Blue River clearly understood this. As for Poplar Beach, many players in the guild knew about his pressuring. Although the current rumor was that the guild leader had sent Blue River over to pioneer in the 10th server in preparation to give Poplar Beach a position, Blue River clearly understood that one aspect of Changing Spring's action was because he didn't want to see this sort of struggle between him and Poplar Beach. This was because for this type of struggle, no matter who won, the loser would lose a lot of face and it was very possible that the loser would leave the guild. This would be like being forced to leave. It would definitely arouse many people's sympathies and would cause a lot of people to lose hope in the guild. The shock caused by this probably wouldn't be small. After all, Poplar Beach and Blue River represented the powers between Blue Brook Guild's new and old players. As for the other aspect, Changing Springs covertly helped Blue River keep his position. At a glance, Blue River looked as if he had been kept away from the Heavenly Domains core, but in the 10th server, Blue River was in charge. Who knew how many newly recruited experts he would find there? Once these players entered the Heavenly Domain, it'd be hard to say if those players would even put Changing Spring in their eyes, Poplar Beach even more so. Sending him to the new server was letting Blue River develop his foundation. Banishment or whatever, that type of thinking was too naive. Blue River clearly understood this because this was something Changing Spring had calmly explained to him. He had even told Blue River more directly that if Blue River PKED with Poplar Beach, he wasn't optimistic for Blue River. He believed that if the two fought for 3 rounds, then Blue River would only have a 30% chance of winning. Blue River was helpless. He really wasn't confident in beating Poplar Beach. Now it seemed that Changing Spring saw this even more clearly. Blue River, his heart like a mirror, saw Changing Spring suddenly turn back to help him out of the situation. In his heart, he was deeply moved by his attentiveness. As a result, he didn't bother arguing with Poplar Beach and directly went offline. Thinking of this, in that moment he logged out, Blue River suddenly had a weird thought arise. He really wanted to see the terrified look on Poplar Beach's face when he was completely suppressed by Lord Grimm. This thought wasn't too good. Blue River hit his head. No matter what happened, Poplar Beach was still a fellow guild member. Although they had some enmity towards each other, how could he let an outsider make him lose face? But, he really did look forward to it. Blue River discovered that he was trying to cheat his own heart. After letting out 2 long sighs, he put his Blue River account card in and returned to the 10th server. Right when he went online, someone from his guild called him over to dungeon. Blue River saw that he was almost level 25. His heart suddenly dropped, he had forgotten something. Thinking, he immediately looked for Lord Grimm on his friends list. "When do you want to clear Frost Forest with us again?" Frost Forest's clear record wasn't at its limit. The several players online were about to hit level 25. After switching their equipment with level 25 ones, that was the moment when they could achieve Frost Forest's final record. However, even if they wore level 25 equipment, if they wanted to copy Lord Grimm's method of one-wave rush, then although they could do everything else, pulling the monsters like Lord Grimm wasn't possible for them. They all stealthily tried it before. Blue River had been thinking of clearing the boneyard when Lord Grimm hit level 23 and forgot that he hadn't completely settled Frost Forest's record. This, Yi Shu's reply was a bit hesitant. "Did someone already make an appointment?" Blue River feinted. "I've made an appointment already," Yi Shu said helplessly. "Is it tyrannical ambition again?" Blue River said gloomily. Quote, "It is. Brother, I asked for an appointment at the boneyard, but you told me that you'll talk about it later. Why is that when they ask for one you agree?" Blue River's cheeks streamed with tears. "The appointments you make are all things I can't do yet. I can do Frost Forest today night, Yishu said. Blue River was helpless. He decided to watch Lord Grimm's level attentively. Right when Lord Grimm reached level 23, he would immediately make an appointment for Boneyard. Frost Forest. Blue River felt a little pained. They had just set the record not long ago and tonight, it would be broken without a doubt. Or maybe not, Blue River suddenly thought. Although their levels would all be level 25, their equipment might not keep pace with them so quickly. Only now did Blue River and the others have a full suit of level 20 purple equipment. That was also only because beginner village dungeons could be cleared without a limit. In the process of dungeoning until level 20, they naturally found a lot of good equipment. But now, although level 25 equipment dropped in both Frost Forest and Boneyard, purple equipment didn't have a high drop rate. It had only been 2 days, each dungeon had only been cleared 4 times, would they be able to completely arm a party? He calculated this, but Blue River was still gloomy. Although there weren't as many level 25 purple weapons as level 21s, there was still enough to arm a party. Their Blue Brook Guild could, so tyrannical ambition should be able to too. Sigh.